How precarious is this moment for the price of oil and gas as Donald Trump meets with Benjamin Netanyahu?
Well, first of all, let me commend President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu for a very productive meeting, for very positive rhetoric, and it shows the strong, resilient, growing, and eternal bond between the United States and our strong ally Israel in the Middle East. In terms of energy prices, obviously it's about supply, supply, supply. We need abundant oil. We need abundant natural gas. I occupy the nuclear space. I think we need big nuclear and small nuclear going forward. Chris Wright, our new energy secretary, I think is going to do a very great job in that regard. But I think all of the indicators, and again, I applaud President Trump for this, are ramping up supply, at the same time dealing with situations in a very dangerous world. In terms of Iran, let me be very, very clear. As you know, as chairman of the Energy and Water Subcommittee of Appropriations, I fund our nation's nuclear arsenal under the NNSA, the National Nuclear Security Administration. I'm responsible for funding that. We have got to make sure that the Iranians are never able to develop and deploy the use of a tactical nuclear weapon of any kind. I think Donald Trump has been steadfast about that. I'm steadfast about that. So the reality is where we've got somebody new in charge, President Trump, who is very cognizant, very aware, and watching all of this. So a lot of moving parts. I give him very high marks. And I also want to thank Prime Minister Netanyahu for coming to America at a critical time and being the first foreign visit.
Well, Congressman, I'd like to ask you about something else that does seem it's going to be impacting American energy, and that's the retaliatory tariffs that China has announced in response to the 10% levies that Donald Trump, as of midnight, has placed on all Chinese goods. When we consider that response from China, the idea that this could potentially ramp up even further, is this something that benefits the 3rd District in Tennessee? Is this not just going to lead to higher prices for consumers and potentially damage American energy?
Well, again, I want to commend President Trump. For too long, China has taken advantage of its position in the energy sector. Let's take a look at solar. They go in and they flood the market with chips that basically drive out American competition. They basically dump. They use their powerful position and their control to basically chase everyone else out of the market, whether it's solar or other types. They're moving ahead in nuclear as well, including new nuclear. So at some point in time, and now is the time, President Trump is going to stand up to China. I think ultimately Xi will understand that President Trump is for America, Xi is for China, and there's going to have to be a change in the relationship. It can no longer continue to be this one-way dominance by China, not only against the United States, but against the rest of the world. So America is standing up. Short-term, possibly have some issues. Long-term gain, getting American dominance in energy and all of our other sectors back strong and secure.
Of course, the door swings both ways, Congressman. On Bloomberg Surveillance this morning, we heard from Sarah Bianchi, the chief strategist, political affairs, public policy at Evercore ISI, former deputy U.S. trade representative, had this to say about China's response to the retaliatory tariffs. Listen.
Beijing did, need to look strong in responding back, although it is a measured response. That one could go on for a while. There's a lot of complexity in that relationship and a lot of things to work out. I do expect this year we're going to see higher tariffs on China that are lasting. I expect the administration to go back to its initial 301 investigation. I expect there to be a lot to say on export controls. So maybe he pulls back briefly, but I think it's much more likely these ones stay in place.
So, Congressman, this is a trade war to stay, it sounds like. What does it mean for manufacturers in your state?
Well, I think it means manufacturers in our state are going to be attracting more manufacturing to our state and to our country. Let me be specific. Volkswagen, which is actually in my district, is now wooing Audi and some of their other brands to look at manufacturing in the United States. I think it's going to be a period of readjustment, but a period where I ultimately think the Chinese will realize that America is no longer going to take the disadvantageous, overwhelming relationship that has been in China's favor. And what's going to happen, I think, China will realize at some point in time they, like Mexico and other countries, will come to the table and renegotiate with the United States because it will benefit them to do that in the short run and long run. This is a tactical move by Trump. I think he's been successful again with Mexico. He's been successful with Canada. I have no reason to believe that ultimately he'll not be successful with China.
Congressman, I'd like to ask you about something else that has made a lot of headlines in the last few days, and that is the access that Elon Musk and the Department of Government Efficiency have been granted to Treasury payment systems. Elon Musk obviously, well, has a role in some sense as a government employee here. He has not been confirmed by the Senate. It's unclear what his security clearance status actually is. Should he be having access to the sensitive financial data of millions of Americans?
As a constitutionalist, I want to stay in my lane. I have oversight power as an appropriator in the United States House, and I do use that.
But what would you say if a constituent asked you why Elon Musk got to see their social security number?
I would basically say at this point in time, we have to wait and see what exactly has been seen. But this is the purview of the executive branch. This is something that Congress can inquire. But once again, Treasury and the Treasury Secretary, I think, has actually addressed this in a very meaningful way. We are going to find out exactly what has gone on. But ultimately, this is the call of the executive branch and not the legislative or judicial branch.
Well, it will be under your purview, I suspect, if the administration, by direction of Elon Musk, wants to rid the nation of certain government agencies. If Donald Trump, for instance, wants to shutter the Department of Education, doesn't Congress need to have a say in that?
Absolutely. I think Congress and the United States House and the United States Senate do have a role. The executive branch has a role. And ultimately, maybe even the courts will have a role to look at what the balance of power is. I think that's a good, healthy debate for our republic, for our balance of powers. And basically what we've seen over the years is a growth in these federal agencies, whether it's the Department of Education or other federal agencies, beyond the bounds of what I think even Congress wanted. Now, the Chevron decision, which the Supreme Court weighed in, is going to give much more authority, I think, to the legislative branch, where actually I think it belongs. Ultimately, that will take time to get that power back. But it's not one size fits all. It is a process. It is a constitutional process, and we will work it out for the American people. And as you alluded to it earlier, our constituents will be heard on all sides of this aisle and ultimately at the ballot box. So we will be responsive in the House. Our senators will. And of course, I think the executive branch will on a broad scale.